Welcome to the Peopling Podcast, where we hang out with brilliant human beings who teach us how to be better, well, humans, and decode what makes us tick and click. Inspired by the book Peopling, available on Amazon. Let's get this episode started. Hi, friends. Welcome to the Peopling Podcast. We're so glad you're here. This is where we get to connect and communicate and grow through every season of life. We explore what real people think and how they act and show up and relate to others in friendship, marriage, and in leadership, so we can all learn how to people a little better. I'm your host, Christy, and I am so excited to get to introduce to you our VIP guests for this episode. We've got Robert and Kaylee Fakui, and they are the co-founders of I-61 Incorporated. They have a business consulting company and so much more. They have a podcast and a book, and I just am so ecstatic to get to share them with you today and what they are up to. They assist married entrepreneurs to create better work-life balance and structuring their business to scale while giving precious time back to the owners to invest into their marriage and their family. So I'm so excited to get to introduce our VIP guest with you today. Robert, Kaylee, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us. We are honored.
It's always good to see you.
Awesome. Awesome. Great to see you as well. So why don't we start off with, how did you wind up having this business at this time in your marriage and in your life? Share with us how you wound up here.
Well, that's always a big question because it's always a journey, right? Because it wasn't like I just woke up one day and said, hey, let's have married business owners. So for me, at least the way it works, it's always, I have ideas, I have goals, I have visions, but truly, it's always one step at a time. It's almost like a breadcrumb trail. So I started the one thing I want to do when I was growing up, well, not say what growing up, my dad's words of wisdom to me were three things: stay out of debt, go to school, get a good job. Right? That was the three thing.
Thanks, Dad.
I did the first two pretty well. I got in debt going to college, but that's another story. But, went to college, got a marketing degree, and then really spent the bulk of my career in Fortune 500 companies doing marketing and sales. I was actually working for Coca-Cola, and then I worked for Big Pharma. So really career-wise, professionally, I was always doing well. So as far as starting a business, that was never on my radar. Especially growing up, my dad was a pastor. So I was born in Hawaii. Dad was a pastor. So business entrepreneurship was not a thing in our household. So that was never brought up. It was more about safety and security. So I really loved the safety and security of being in a Fortune 500 company, all the benefits and good pay and all that stuff. But as actually when I met Kaylee, she said, when we're dating, she said, I can see you having a business. And I was like, no, that sounds too risky.
And I'm like, why not? I can totally see it.
Because she grew up the opposite. She grew up in a business household, in an entrepreneurship household. So anyways, she mentioned that when we were dating. Never thought about it again. Probably about 5-6 years into our marriage, maybe a little longer. But anyways, I did start thinking about, because I was in my mid-40s by that time, and I did start thinking about, what do I want to do for the rest of my life, kind of thing. I guess that's what happens when you get in your 40s. That's what they talk about, the midlife crisis, because you're basically at that inflection point, knowing that, look, either if I'm going to change, whether it's career or business or whatever, now's a good time. So you have time to build it, right? As opposed to waiting to your 50s or 60s, and then you're older. So anyways, I was contemplating, well, maybe I would start a business, but I didn't know what it would be. And so I just started doing some marketing consulting on the side. At first, I just started helping a couple friends with their business. And then I'm like, oh, I like this. And so I started charging. And then so I got some more clients. And what I thought I was doing was getting paid to do market research to find a business I'd want to start. Because I didn't know what it would be. So I said, well, let me consult with different types of businesses, and then maybe I'll find something. So I looked at it as paid market research, is the way I looked at it. It's
awesome.
But then I realized, I really love consulting. And it wasn't just the consulting. It was, I always like making improvement. I always like seeing the results, right? And so really seeing business go from, here to there and improving in their sales and the growth of their business was fun, but also More, it was the relationships I built with the business owners. So I was very intentional about marketing my services to more small family business, not to big corporations. One, I was trying to stay, kind of steer away from any potential conflict of interest because I was still working my day job with my pharmaceutical company. So I wanted to make sure I was kind of as distant from that as possible. Plus, it was just, who was around me. It was a lot of small family business. And so, when you develop the relationship with the business owners, all I have to say. And it was a lot of fun, and not just seeing how the business does, but what it does to them and their families and for the employees. I really got to build relationships with the team, right? As opposed to if I was consulting with corporations, it's a different relationship. They don't have, I mean, they have a stake obviously in the business that I'm consulting with, but it's a different kind of stake, right? Whereas when you own the business, I mean, everything's on your shoulders. So, so really enjoyed that. But one thing I noticed as I was consulting with them, they hired me for marketing. One of the first things I noticed as I started to unpeel the onion in their business was one of my first comments to them was always like, "You're working way too hard." I was like, coming from the corporate background, one of the benefits is you already have systems and processes in place, and people have their spot. You're hired for specific duties and all that. So I was seeing a lot of inefficiencies in the business. There wasn't a lot of processes involved. There was a lot of inefficiencies, how they spent their time, to even how they priced themselves, and the margin or lack thereof that they left themselves with, both financially and even time-wise. So when I look at just the productivity and efficiency of the business, I'm like, there are so many gaps here that the real issue isn't so much marketing, is just that you have so much inefficiencies and you're covering that up with putting in more time into the business. And so because they didn't know what to fix, they just fix it by putting in more time and effort. And certainly that can help you, but at some point it creates strain on the person and their relationships, their marriage, their family. And that's what I was seeing as they started talking about their family life. And I was like, oh, I see the connection here, right? Or,
Yeah.
you're working so hard in the business, you're sacrificing your time at home. And so that's when I looked at Kaylee and I said, I think there's an issue here, a common issue that nobody's really addressing, and nobody really realizes that, hey, there's a fix here, but we don't know how to have a work-life balance because we don't think that's a thing. And we just think we just have to put as much time and effort to build the business to be as successful as it can. Then at some point, then you can focus on your marriage and family. But that's not exactly how it works, and we can unpack that later. But all that to say is that as I looked at my own life growing up in a pastor's home, even though it wasn't an entrepreneurship home, but still my dad was so focused on the ministry that the family took a back seat. And you see that a lot in a lot of ministry homes. And I'm thinking that's a big reason why you hear these pastor kid stories of being rebellious, is because we're not getting a proper attention at home because all the attention's at the church and the congregation, and the family's taking a back seat. And Kaylee kind of grew up in a similar household.
Yeah, boy, you're talking about my childhood
Yeah.
because I'm third generation entrepreneur. My dad worked 6 days a week, so he wasn't home. And the go-to was, and I've seen this with a lot of other entrepreneurs, is like, if we need more money, we just put more time in. But that's not always the magic answer, because if you've got a lot of inefficiencies, and a lot of time as entrepreneurs, we're wearing 100 different hats. So we're really not being efficient or productive at very many things because we can't be good at everything. We think we are, but let's be honest. You know what I mean? And we don't want to let go of control because, we got to do everything and it's got to come by my desk to get approved. So we're the backlog. So all that to say is, growing up with my dad working that many hours a day, it was hard on our family and it fractured it. And as a child, we just want our parents to be home. We wanted our dad to be home. Well, I did, to play ball with me, to hang out, just go do fun things. But when he's always at work, it's tough because you feel like I did. The business was the mistress growing up.
So all that saying, I guess both from our own childhood upbringings, feeling the brunt of, I guess you'd call it neglect. But like I said, we don't fault our parents, our dad and anything, because that's just what they knew. Just like the business owners today, that's just what they know because they're not taught anything different. The expectation is you put everything, your heart and soul in the business, and you're going to have to sacrifice time and relationship. in order to build a successful business. And that's kind of what we're taught. And so that's kind of, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point, right? As opposed to saying, wait, there might be a better way to do this. And even as I started doing the consulting on the side to build our business on the side, even after I still had my day job in day, and then I would do the consulting on in the evening. But even myself, I was starting to fall into that just busy, busy, busy. And it was like these 2 a.m. bedtimes that were very common. And so by the time Friday and Saturday hit, even though I wasn't working on the weekends, I was so tired and spent that I'd walk the dog in the morning on Saturday morning, get to bed, have breakfast with Kaylee, and then I just want to go take a nap. Not just want to take a nap. Sometimes I would go take a nap after breakfast on the couch because I was just so tired. And so I wasn't even there. I wasn't even present with her emotionally, mentally. I was there physically, but just in physical presence and form, but not mentally, emotionally. And so there was one evening or one morning at 2 a.m. where I just sat here at this desk and said, there's got to be a better way to do this. I'm like, I'm just killing myself, and it's not fair to Kaylee that, she doesn't have her husband, even though she accepted the fact that during this transition of, side hustle and then to leave the corporate job, this is how it's going to be. But even then I said, well, there's got to be a better way. I said, what if I got to bed at least by 11 p.m. instead of 2 a.m.? That's manageable, right? Because that's an extra 15 hours a week of sleep,
which is a lot.
3 times 5, right?
Like,
So that's good. And so by the time the weekend hits, I'm still fresh, right? So anyways, I put a boundary in place. And then what it did was it forced me to audit where I spent my time and how much it was productive use of my time versus busy work. And I think we can all know the difference between just being busy versus being productive. And most entrepreneurs, even just like myself included, we're busy, but a lot of that busy work is not very productive. And so if I can just kind of eliminate as much as possible some of the busy work, and so focus more of my time on the productive work, then I would grow, but would grow in a healthy way. And so that's kind of what started just my own journey, but also then helping our business owner clients to be able to do the same thing, to say, let's prioritize home, and then let's work smarter, not harder. And so that's a little bit of the story of how we got here.
Before we dive any deeper into this conversation, I want to take a quick moment to share a tool that has significantly improved my life, and that's called Growth Day. It's like having world-class mentors right in your pocket. There are daily challenges that help grow your confidence, your inspiration, and your drive. Check out the show notes for your link to a free trial, and don't let another moment pass you by without checking out Growth Day. So you learned some hard lessons yourself, and you also got to implement that in your life, but also to be able to teach your clients. I love that. Sometimes that's the way we have to learn the lessons. So how long were you doing your side hustle and your corporate job simultaneously until you were able to step out of your corporate job? And then when you stepped out, how tell us how everything started to unfold with where you're at today, because you guys wrote a book and you co-host this podcast and you have a lot of things happening.
Yeah. So what was the first part of the question?
How long did you do your side hustle and the corporate job?
It was about probably almost 5 years.
Oof.
Yeah, it was. And at first, the first couple of years was really pretty light. I was just helping some people on the side. I don't even know if I was fully intent on leaving the corporate job. It was just, a little activity on the side. But then probably the last 3 years was when I got serious. I said, okay, I need to, set a mark to leave because I didn't want to be doing double duty. First couple of years was fun, but then afterwards it's like I gotta make a decision either way, right? So the last 3 years is when I made the intention to leave. And then when I left, it was really this was actually 2 years before I left. I thought I was gonna leave. I marked a date. It was September. It was a September, and I was thinking to myself, okay, next in January I'm gonna leave. So I'll work to the end of the year, and then I'll leave that and then start, consulting full time. Well, I had a lot of different signs of, no, it's not time to leave. There's a lot of interesting signs that we can go into later, but it was clear that I wasn't supposed to leave then. So I went another 2 years, and looking back, I needed those extra 2 years to, I'll say maturity, a little bit of business maturity, but also to really find my lane, my niche, so to speak, but also learn a few more things, as a consultant and in business. So I needed those 2 years, but then, so and after another 2 years, I'm like, okay, this is getting crazy. I've got to leave. I got to either give this up and stay in my corporate job, or I need to leave. And so I really felt, at peace about the decision. And there's a lot of internal changes at the company too that was happening. That was like, yeah, I really want to leave. It was getting a little uncomfortable. And so, long story short, I really felt it was time to leave. And then Kaylee actually said to me, "Yeah, I'm at peace with this." The first time around, she wasn't at peace. She didn't tell me. The first time around, she wasn't at peace with the move, but she didn't tell me she wanted to support me, so she didn't say anything. But this time around, she did tell me I'm at peace with the move. And I'm like, "Oh, well, I didn't know you weren't at peace the first time. Why didn't you tell me?" Right? Probably, I may or may not have listened. I don't know. But, you know, li- first lesson I learned, or I'll say first lesson I learned, but one of the key lessons I was learning through that, especially for a lot of the married business owners we deal with, right? It's like, the two of you got to be at peace with the decision. And if you're both at peace with the decision, things will always go well. Now, the decision may not always go well. Like if you're making a business decision or an investment, maybe it might not go well. But regardless, because you made the decision together and you're both in agreement, there's not going to be any finger pointings. And then you're just going to figure out how to fix it and move forward. As opposed to a lot of times what happens, and it's happened to us, and it's happened to clients and even friends, when one person overrides the other person's, like, I don't think we should do this, and the other spouse overrides it, there's always going to be conflict, even if the decision turns out well. But when the decision doesn't go well, then all hell breaks loose because there's finger pointing, accusations, and all that, right? So we always tell our clients, I was like, the only way you win as husband and wife is when you make a decision, you're both at peace to the decision. And so
That
that's
is
one of the
so
things I
good.
learned from that exit from the company.
You've left the corporate job. You're now doing the business consulting full time. Did you start off serving married couples that are in business together, or how did it morph into that?
No, it was probably about two couple of years afterwards, and that's when, because as I was doing it full time, then we're seeing more clients and seeing more entrepreneurs. And that's when I was like seeing the trend. When I really saw the trend, and that's when I told to Kaylee, I was like, "Hey, I think there's an issue here, a common issue that no one's dealing with." And as I was googling, there wasn't really any resources for married business owners. How to do, like, similar to how to do marriage and business well. You can't compartmentalize the two, but people, they try to, but you can't. One's going to overlap into that. Part of your life is going to overlap into the other side. And even if they're not working together in the business, but the business is going to affect home, right? One way or the other. And so how do you navigate those things? And it's a unique issue. Like, only about 9% of the population is a business owner, and about 66 to 70% of them are married, right? So you're talking about 6-7% of the entire population are married and have a business. So very few people deal with this, right? Majority of the population, and majority of the married population doesn't understand this, but only a few of us do. And so therefore there's probably not, that's why there hasn't been a lot of resource on it, because it's not a big market, right? And I'm thinking, wait a second, this is an issue we got to deal with, and let's deal with it head on instead of trying to avoid it and hoping it goes away if the business does well. And so that's when I said, honey, I think we've learned a few things, growing up, not just being married, but even going to coaching or counseling before we even got married. Letting things out learned that's helped us, I think we could pass on to other people.
Kaylee, this question is for you specifically. When Robert was saying, I'm seeing this trend, like, were you feeling that as well? Were you experiencing that already? And you were like, oh my gosh, this is like, this is where we need to focus, or did you fight that a little bit? What was your thoughts?
No, because I could totally relate to it because I saw it growing up.
You're
You know what I
living it,
mean?
right?
So I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, I have a heart for small business. I want them to succeed. I want their families to succeed. And it really tugged at my heartstrings because it hit home for me. So,
So I was sharing an excitement about our conversation with somebody, and I was sharing that your specialty is working with couples that work together. And the first thing that they said, and I hear this often, oh, I could never work with my spouse.
Oh, I hear that all the time. But
I just,
it's not necessarily, I think, what people think. It can look like a lot of different things. It's not one size fits all. So we work together, but we're not together all day necessarily working on the same thing. We have different strengths. And so, he tells me, honey, go make friends. And that's his way of saying, in air quotes, you're the salesperson.
go network,
He's like,
go
go make
generate some
friends,
business.
honey. He's like, because we're at the cafe getting coffee and I'm chatting to the person in front of me. And later he'll be like, honey, do you know them? I'm like, no. It's like, I just met him and they invited us over for dinner. And he's like, oh my gosh.
Love it.
So it's, a lot of it is working in your zone of genius. What are you good at? It's not necessarily being inseparable because a lot of times we marry somebody opposite of us and it rubs us the wrong way. I mean, it's cute when you're dating. You're like, oh my gosh, you're so detailed. It's great. And then I got married and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're driving me crazy with all these details because I'm very creative. And now if I'm doing something super detailed, I'll be like, honey, can you look at this for me? And he's
I
like,
love
sure.
that.
Or it
I
used to be a
love
lot of
that.
conflict.
Yeah. So, maybe from each of your perspectives, because to your point there, Kaylee, you're opposite, so you're probably going to catch things that are a little bit different from each other. So, if you could each answer this question individually, what's the biggest struggle? Whether it's a trend or if you've seen it just show up a couple times, that could be the either explosive thing or the thing that like is the straw that broke the camel's back or whatever. What's the biggest struggle that you see couples that are in business together? And sometimes they might each have their own business, right? But being entrepreneurs takes a very special kind of spirit and drive in this world. And so when you're running your own business, I mean, like it's you switched out working 40 hours a week for somebody else, you traded that to upgrade to 65, 70 hours for yourself, right? So it's just a different kind of movement in business and in work. But what's the biggest struggle that you see that kind of if we knew about or brought it to our awareness, we can kind of unpack that a little bit?
Well, that's a good question.
Well, I got a clarifying question. Struggle just as far as running a business or running a
The
business being married?
relationship.
I would say the struggle, like running a business and the relationship, like that's a very special space that you guys serve.
So what comes to mind for me is boundaries. Because my husband, God bless him, he is good. I'll use us as an example. He is good at so many things. And once people find this out, they want him on his board. So he could have his whole day just board after board. You know what I mean? And they're not paying, and we still got to pay the rent.
Right.
That's because I'm usually on a nonprofit board.
Right.
For-profit boards pay, so I got to change my model.
And so, people were just constantly asking him, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, sometimes somebody said to him, "Oh, will you be on my board?" Luckily, this is later, not recently when he first was on all these boards, and he's like, "Let me shadow you," because he says, "Oh, this isn't going to take that many hours, yada yada." Well, it ends up there's Saturdays and all this stuff, and Robert shadowed him, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, there's a lot involved in this being on this board thing. It's not just a quarterly meeting." He gracefully declined for that, but in the past, it, um, bothered me because I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, we got all these other things that it seemed like more," not that a board isn't a good thing, of a priority, you know what I mean? And, so then we sat down and we talked about it, and we came up with a number. So we decided, okay, how about, I don't remember what the number is,
Fine.
5, which 5 is, a handful. So we came up with a number that 5 would be good
Five's my board
limit.
limit.
And so, so when people ask him, he's either has to get off a 1 to take this one because we're at the limit. And it makes
Nice.
me not have to be the bad person. Like, oh my gosh, another one. Like we've got 25. It's not like you're bringing home lost kittens or something, puppies. And so that takes some pressure off of me knowing that we have the limit of 5 and that he can pick whatever 5 they are. Uh, and yeah, and I'm at peace with that.
Yeah, and I'll just add on the boundaries thing. I'll add another spin is the boundaries between working and not working. So when you're home, you should be home. Or for those of us that have a home office, like the minute I walk out my office at 6 o'clock to go walk the dog, then that's a transition from business and work to now home, being married, and have a family. So that is very hard for most entrepreneurs. And just that, in fact, if you can just get that done right, you'll find not only will your home life be well, but you'll actually be more productive at work, because this leads into the belief that we got to put more time and effort into the business. Well, there's so much productivity research around the fact that after you go work 50 hours in a week, your productivity level does not increase. It actually plateaus and then actually decreases at a certain point. Because whether whether you realize, no matter how high energy you think you are, just physically, mentally, emotionally, even spiritually, you just decline at the more you're working. And you don't realize it. You don't see it. But if you can, like Friday, you see all the productivity. By Thursday and Friday, you're less productive. You get less done. You make more mistakes by the end of the week than you do in the beginning of the week when you're fresh, right? I think we can, if we're honest, we can see that for ourselves. Because I can see myself Friday afternoons looking at emails, and sometimes just literally staring at the email, trying to figure out, do I want to respond? How do I respond? And there's so much stuff, and I'm literally going through email after email and not even answering some of them. I mean, so just that alone, you can see that, okay, I'm not as sharp, right? And then that spills over at home. So all that to say is being well, getting the right amount of rest, and not just about sleep, but just being disconnected from work is very helpful, so that you're actually more productive when you do work. And also, I mean, at home, your family wants you home, right? As Kaylee was sharing, your kids just want you to play, and your wife, your husband wants to spend some time with you, wants to talk to you, instead of what happens at the dinner table. You're answering texts, maybe even picking up a phone call because it's an important client or whatever, right? There's always business issues, whether it's you're doing something or thinking about it or talking about it at home when you should be off. And that's why you never feel like you're ever disconnected from work. And so, and then that's where, when it spills in your personal life, that's where your family doesn't even think they're valuable. They think that they're taking a back seat. The business is the mistress in the relationship, as Kaylee shared earlier. And because we think, oh, we got to always be on, but the proof is there's no data, no research to support the amount of time that you spend in the business equates to X amount of dollars. There's no parallel in time spent and dollars earned in the business. There's not. It's just like I can work less but make more, because one contract can be $100,000 contract or $1,000 contract, and depending on who I'm targeting, it takes just as much effort to get a low-paying contract as it has taken a high-paying contract. And as coaches and consultants, I've found that the most our higher-paying clients are the ones that are least problems.
Mhm.
And so
I have
just
seen
all
that
that, right?
yes.
Go ahead.
I have seen that across the board. The tiny little things that you say yes to can often be that Achilles heel that, like, drains you of time and energy and, just adds frustration. So I love that you said that. I think that's really powerful, especially for the business owners and entrepreneurs in the room that are listening. You don't have to say yes to everything. It's probably not wise to say yes to everything, but especially the people who are growing their business and feel like they need to, the people who are really, really hungry right now. Like, the kids are small enough right now. I need to grow the business so that way when they get a little bit older and they need that, you know, more motherly, fatherly time, I'll have it, which is sometimes a lie we tell ourselves, right? Because a lot of times we can get caught up in that trap of busyness and building to that success that 60 hours or whatever somebody's putting into it becomes a consistent part in their life, not just a, hey, I'm going to do this in the first year, right? Um, it sounds to me like you two would have some amazing mindset upgrades that an entrepreneur, business owner can infuse into their brain from listening to this from you today. What are a couple of upgrades that our mindset needs to have? I think the probably biggest giveaway you just said is there's not this data that proves more time equals a bigger paycheck. So, what else might we need to shift in our thinking so that way all of this time and energy we're doing for our family can actually result in time for our family?
Yeah. I'd say don't accept the status quo. Whatever the entrepreneur gurus out there talking about hustle and grind and all that stuff. This is the way you have to do it to succeed. Like even like marketing, there always like people out hear this a lot. It's like you've got to be on social media. You got to be on social media. And I said, no, you don't. No, you don't. Absolutely not. No, you don't. You have to be whatever marketing you're going to do. You have to be consistent and good at it. Right? That's clear. And so marketing is just communicating to the right audience, right, with the right product and service. How you do that is there's all kinds of ways to do that. And I know high paying like consultants that charge $1,000 an hour and they're doing very well. They don't have a social media account. They have a LinkedIn account, but they don't manage it. And they have barely a profile, but because they have built relationships with the right people and the right organizations, the right companies, right? Because at the end of the day, it's all about relationships. And so anyways, I just use that example as don't believe the hype. Don't believe there's only one way to do this. So as you're thinking about your business, what do you want? Like in your life and your business, how do you want the business to support your life? Not the other way around. How do you fit your life into the business? But what do you want? And whatever you want and say you can do, whatever vision and the dreams and the goals and the things you want to aspire to, you can do it. You just have to figure it out. Right. But if we just keep going and doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, because like you said, once you get in a pattern of overworking all the time and thinking, oh, it's only be for the startup season, you've now established a pattern and a habit that's very hard to break. Because we even have clients, like we have a client that, recent client, their business is blowing up. Financially, it's doing well, but they don't know how to turn it off. They have the resources to go take breaks, take the day nights, do all the things you should be doing, the things that they aspired to do when they started this business, right? But because they've established a pattern and a habit of working and overworking and filling up the schedule with all kinds of stuff besides themselves and their own time for themselves, that they can't figure out how to do it because they don't know how to get off this roller coaster, right? So all I have to say is you've got to set the time now, be intentional about determining with your spouse, or even if you're single, what's the life I want to build? And then how do you start to live that out now, right? It's not about when you make a lot of money and take those vacations or whatever. Right now, you can if you don't have the money to go travel, you can take a staycation, right? You can take the breaks and all that. So all that to say is you can live the best life now with whatever resource you have. It's just not going to look the way it might when you have $1 million, but you can start to establish that pattern of working well, but making sure you're enjoying your personal life and your relationships and all that.
And I want to say, don't believe the lie that you have to do it all yourself. I know that's hard. And a lot of us entrepreneurs, we're micromanagers, but we're good at we're usually good at growing the business and moving it forward. So get in your zone of genius and stay there. Be intentional, be productive, and get people to support you. And when you hire people, allow them freedom to do that job without you micromanaging and having to have everything come across your desk. That way you can grow and you won't be the one that's holding up the whole growth strategy because, you can only grow as much as the owner will allow it to happen.
I love that. That is such great advice. Somebody quite a while ago had taught me 80% is good enough. Like good enough is good enough. And just because you might execute something this way, if you've hired somebody, trained them, prepared them the way that you desire it, then let them empower them to execute on the things that you're asking rather than, like you said, micromanaging, which you become the bottleneck. Both you, that was amazing, amazing feedback. That was incredible, honestly. And you've lived it. I mean, you started off in your corporate job, Robert, and then go into helping friends with their marketing because that was your background, which morphed into business consulting, which then shifted into serving specifically married couples. How long ago did you all start your podcast?
2020. January 2020.
2020.
Yep.
Awesome. And when was your book Tandem published?
September 2022.
Awesome. So you started the podcast and found that there was a bigger audience to reach through your book?
Yeah, well, I don't know if that's the thinking, but
Well, a lot of people kept
it-
asking us for a book
yeah,
too.
yeah. And we resisted, and I knew as far as writing a book, it would fall on my shoulders. And I was thinking, man, and I tried to write a book, got a couple chapters in, and I just got bored. I just couldn't do it. And so, but as we, we had the podcast and we're doing our thing with our coaching business, and I just felt that, or we both of us just felt really that, there's not a lot of, there's more and more consultants starting to get into space a little bit. And we just felt that we need to set the pace. Like, let's get our book out and let's establish what we think is good and proper, and get it out there. And it's also another way, a cheaper way to digest and for people to get help. Because a lot of business owners, either they literally don't have the funds to pay us for coaching, or sometimes they're just afraid to do it, to spend the money, or there's a whole host of reasons. But the book is kind of usually an easily digestible way for people to at least glean from what we have to offer besides the podcast. So if you take the podcast and the book together, and there's also a little digital workbook they can download in the book so that they can actually work together as husband and wife on this. But we just felt, it's just another way to digest it. Whether we get business from it or not was irrelevant. It was just, we knew we need to replicate ourselves, and we can't help everybody anyway. Even if in a group coaching format, there's only so many couples that we can help, right? So the book is a way just for the reach, to be able to help as many people as possible.
Love that. Speaking of helping as many people as possible, on our podcast, I'd love to challenge you to challenge our audience here on how to be the change. So, an actionable step. What would be one actionable step that you can share with us that we can take on this week so that we can improve our human connection, whether it's business or our personal relationships, however you want to formulate it? What's one thing that you'd like to share with us? I hope each of you have something that you can share with our audience.
I'd say be intentional. Connect with somebody this week. It could be a phone call, it could be a text, could be a coffee, it could be a lot of different things. And connect with them. When I say that, it means connect in their style. Like, I know a gal asked me to be on her podcast not too long ago, and she's like, "Oh, can you call me?" And I said, "Sure." And I called her, and she was just so excited because she goes, "Nobody calls me. And I love to talk on the phone." And so it kind of made my day knowing that that was important to her. Because I know some people, might have a different style than the other person, but generally people love to know that you're thinking of them and just saying, "Hi, how's it going? I've been praying for you. Is there anything I can do for you?" It seems like in the social media age, I love it, but I think people are really starving for the one-on-one connection, especially in person. There's nothing like it.
Love that.
No, I'll come with it from the standpoint of taking back control of your time, right? We get so out of control, our calendar gets full because we don't have any control. We don't know how to say no. We don't know, talk about boundaries. So we get asked this a lot: is how do we fit our personal life into our, busy schedule? And I said, well, that's the problem. You don't try to fit it in. You start by establishing where it goes and then backfill it with everything else. So for example, look at your calendar Monday through Friday or Sunday through Saturday, and start with a blank slate and go based on your priorities, what you deem your priorities are for you. And if you're married, your spouse, like, what do you want to do for yourself personally? Like, for your health, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. What do you do when you do it, like, relationally? And then put those things in the calendar. So first thing in the morning, I have my quiet time, right? I go for a walk. And Saturdays we do a thing. We have when it's a once a week date night. It doesn't have to be on a Friday or Saturday night. It could be the Saturday. Sometimes we've had a Wednesday night. We just did a Wednesday night dinner, right? Or sometimes it's a coffee on a Thursday morning or something like that. But talk to your spouse, look at yourself, and go plug those things in when do I want to work out or take a walk or whatever. When I want to have, like, we have a weekly meeting Mondays at 3:30 every week. We have a regular weekly meeting for ourselves and to talk about business and also personal stuff. So that's plugged in the calendar. That's on repeat, right? Once a week. And daily, what are the daily things that I do or we do? And put those things in the calendar first, and then also think about breaks and maybe a quarterly getaway or a vacation. Start planning those things out and plug it in the calendar, and then you bet. Because otherwise, it never gets done. We just had dinner with a couple, and I think they've been married about a year and a half. They haven't taken the honeymoon yet, so that's always a thing that gets brought up every once in a while. And he's like, "Oh, I get some more clients." I'm like, "I think we can do it here. I think I got all these clients. I gotta onboard and all that." I said, "Dude, you just gotta plan it. If you don't book it, it's never gonna happen."
It's not going to plan itself.
And you can see clients before or after, right? You
And
don't
his
have.
wife is wanting to go on a honeymoon, let me tell
Yeah.
you guys.
And so I was like, you act like we're controlled by, we're not taking control of our own life is basically what's happening. That's an example of someone's not even taking control of your own life. Yes, business is important, but it's not the thing, right? And so plug those things in your calendar first, and then you backfill. Otherwise, trying to squeeze it in, good luck.
You just gave permission to a lot of people to take charge of their lives. And sometimes it's the simplest, like it's very simple, not easy, right? Very simple. And yet we don't give ourselves permission to do that. And you just did that. So what a beautiful gift. And Kaylee, I want to kind of um, finish off there what you were saying. I love that you're saying reach out to somebody the way that they would like to be connected. And sometimes God will put a little name, right, of somebody on my heart. And I'm like, oh man, I haven't talked to so and so in so long. I need to reach out. If you get that, if
Mhm.
you get that download of like that person's name, I want to encourage our audience right now, like, stop what you're doing and reach out. There's a reason. There's a reason. And you could really, really bless them because in that moment, they might be praying in for, God, I just need a little bit of encouragement to get through this day, you know? And you might be that gift that somebody gets to have.
Don't believe the lie, well, it's been too long, I can't connect with them or contact them. That is total lie because uh, people don't look at it that way. It could be years you haven't talked with them, and then you think of the people you reconnected with. Robert with his high school peeps, I don't know, like 5 years, 10 years ago, he hadn't talked to them in years, and he contacted them one day out of the blue, and they were so glad to hear from him.
That's an important takeaway. People are going to be glad to hear from you. So, yeah, that is a bloody lie, isn't it? I love that. Thank you for this. Thank you for what you've shared with us today. I'm going to encourage our audience, please do take a look at the show notes. We've got all of the links there where you can connect with Robert and Kaylee. You can check out their podcast because they share some incredible, incredible insights on their own podcast. Check out their book. It might be a real big blessing to you and your business. And you all did a very special gift for the Peopling podcast. So I want to say thank you for that. A link in there for marriedentrepreneur.co, not .com, .co /peopling. And can you tell us a little bit about the free gift that you've given us for going to that website?
Yeah, especially for your married business owners, there's a free assessment that helps you identify where you're thriving in your marriage and business and where there are gaps and suggested areas for improvement. So it's kind of half, how can you improve, relationally, but also how can you improve your business in a way that it's more efficient, more productive, and gives you better returns as opposed to just keep working and doing the same thing over and over again. So it only takes about 5 minutes to take, and you'll get instant results to help you. And then also there's a link to our book, Tandem, the Married Entrepreneur's Guide to Work-Life Balance, as well as our podcasts in there.
Well, thank you for blessing us with that. Thank you for your time and the incredible insight and perspective that you brought to us today. I know that this is going to help a lot of people that are in business together that need this guidance and insight from you because working more and working harder isn't the solution. I love this from our business consultants that are actually living it. So you need to hear from somebody who's actually doing it, right? Doesn't just have a theory about it.
Thanks, Christy. It was great. It was a pleasure.
Yes, thank you, Chrissy. It's fun.
Thank you all. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for tuning in to the Peopling Podcast, and grab your copy of the Peopling book on Amazon, and let's keep this connection movement going. Until next time, be curious, be kind, and keep peopling like you mean it.